Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Incendies, directed by Denis Villeneuve, Free Guy by Sean Levy, The King's Man by Matthew Vaughn. We have newly released Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, man?
Tommy boy, how's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay. How was your week of movies, man?
Week of movies was good. Maybe not obviously, but we have a big release of Elden Ring. I was consumed and splitting my time. Glad I got into 5 though, and of course we have a very exciting new release of The Batman, which I'm sure everyone is dying to hear if it's good or not. Where does it live up? I feel like there's a huge amount of hype around the Batman.
It's the big hit in March. It's a huge hit in March.
Absolutely.
It's the one to see. However, we're starting with Incendies, which is... we're still hitting it hard with Denis Villeneuve.
Yes.
It's kind of our boy lately.
Yes. I wanted to dive into this to see... what early Villeneuve films look like. Incendies is a movie that gets a lot of praise. This is before he dives into what I first found him through with Prisoners and Sicario and a lot of intensity.
Yeah, it's 2010 we're in here.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, man, what a movie. This was a huge watch for me this week. I'll be 100% honest. I picked up this film not too long ago, possibly even for very early on in the podcast, and I put it down just because I felt it was a little hard to keep up with. But upon this second watch and kind of understanding the script and the story structure a little bit more, I was in love with this film. This was a phenomenal film.
What's it about a little bit?
Really, this movie succeeds on a very foreboding tone, the gravity of the situation in this film. And before I get into a little bit about the story, I think for this reason, it is extremely intense. This intensity is on multiple levels. I would say while I love this film, I do have to give a considerable warning at first that this is some extremely intense content. This is a story where two twin siblings, or rather just twin siblings, have to deal with a very terrible, bizarre last wish from their dead mother that is conveyed in their mother's will and kind of sends them on a adventure, believe it or not. I mean, it's not an upbeat adventure. This isn't Uncharted or anything like that, like we covered last week, but it nonetheless does send them on an adventure. What unfolds is a mystery thriller, I think I would describe this as, that has the plot playing out in the mother's life during the past, and it parallels with the present while the siblings are both unraveling the truth of their mother's life. The setting is entirely fictional here, but I think one of my favorite aspects of this is that it mirrors the real-life civil war in Lebanon. I am definitely no expert of this, so let me not speak out of class. But apparently, this was a real civil war from 1975 to 1990. The film matches that both in time dates of the of how it's jumps back and forth through the mother's life, and then again, like I said, parallels that in the present storyline with the twins. And because this fictional setting but real life conflict is the story, I mean, it is very, very intense. I cannot say this enough. The conflict is religiously charged and merciless. Denny really does a incredible job at capturing the brutality of this setting, if fictional or not, but obviously a homage to that real life civil war. And to my disbelief, maybe comes off as maybe his most brutal movie. You know, Tom, this is in comparison to Prisoners, Sicario. I mean,
especially, you know, get some intense stuff going on in
Yeah.
Sicario.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I've always loved Prisoners, specifically Hugh Jackman's character in that, of how real and once again, that intensity. It's so funny to see that his early films are kind of all consumed around this same kind of theme of very, very brutal imagery and very intense, emotionally impacting type of sequences in these films.
And how much did everything hold up as far as effects or even just makeup design, things like that? Because it's been now 12 years.
So yeah, I mean, Incendies is a much more drawn back film. This is, I wouldn't exactly call it low budget, because yes, it's earlier in his career, but when there are action sequences, when there are practical effects as far as gun work, flames, explosions, honestly, it's all very real, you know.
Good.
I don't think kind of a lick of CGI or anything like that. You know?
I always say like a gritty realism and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
I always appreciate to see that. Things I liked about Christopher Nolan, because he hates hates using digital effects so much.
Absolutely. And here, I think my standout for why I was so in love with this movie is that looking at Villeneuve's filmography, I mean, I for a long time have said he's probably the best directors of the 2010s. And to go back to 2010 on the dot and have this still be a standout film among my favorites of Prisoner, of Arrival, you know, and have it stand up to that. I mean, I was really, really shocked.
He certainly seems to be the most consistent as far as quality,
exactly,
and storytelling,
and really, it hits exactly what I want out of a gripping thriller. That it may not have violence be the point of the film, but the movie is elevated because of the intensity of that violence. You know, this is very much a kind of a mystery that unfolds, especially in the present day, because the twins are trying to find where the hell this very odd request from their mother's will comes from, and it is bizarre. It's right in the opening sequences, but I don't want to spoil it too much, because I think, again, even just hearing the words and seeing these actors process it, the gravity of the situation is immense. I think I was hooked from the beginning, even though, like I said before, I put this film down more so because I didn't understand what it was going for, and I wanted to give it its proper due. Sure. I'm so glad I did, and I urge anyone to jump in a similar way. Give it a serious shot, because this film has some real merit to it. Speaking of Denny, this might have been the first to do big block text of sequences or chapters or setting locations on screen. Obviously, I don't know 100% for sure, but I'm trying to think back. 2010, would anything be earlier and have this big block text style of
when you change locations?
Change locations. In this, it is for chapters, but also has location names.
But it's a certain style of the blocking and the way it's on screen. Because, I mean, it's been in film forever, changing of locations and putting up text to that.
But it's just that all the screen is consumed
with it. That's pretty good, because you have noticed it lately, but boy, 2010 is pretty early for that kind of style.
Yeah, and this is way before that we see it adopted by Marvel and a lot of big blockbuster action.
Well, I liked Uncharted, actually. Maybe the one thing I liked about Uncharted.
This is text.
What's the text on screen? But no, the all-consuming stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I was curious about it, and knowing how much of a meteoric rise Denny has in his career, I wonder if this was something that among his peers, they looked at this and they're like, okay, yeah, that's a style that we want.
It's an interesting note. It'd be good to go back and see.
Try to find. Yeah, I don't know how I would
I don't know.
search for it as a film, but
Yeah, it's because it's such a weird little niche thing. It's not the
Yeah.
fact that it's text on screen or changing location. It's the style. It's the type.
exactly. Exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But fair warning, I think a big reason why I turned away from this originally is there are some strong subtitle skills needed here. Important for both understanding the severity and the mystery, probably most important out of that, of what's being revealed in the dialogue, but also being able to juggle watching what is happening on screen, how visceral something is happening on screen, and also being able to process the dialogue. It's not something I normally do because I think it comes very simply. If you know, as an audience member, folks at home, if you like subtitles, if you're adverse to subtitles, that's
Right.
just personal preference.
Yeah,
I don't see
definitely.
any problem with that, but I think I do much how this film almost needs a trigger warning for how almost endlessly intense it is. In the same way, I think there's definitely an understanding that if this is if subtitles or heavy subtitles is not your bag, then once again,
Neither will this be.
yeah.
Yeah.
And being honest and being real, that's I think part of the reason why I may put it down originally. But go through it, you have a phenomenal movie behind that. It's really on that note that I want to finish on. If this was just a story on its own, I think it would work great on its own. I think it would work fine. But especially with how the parallel story is told between the mother's life, seeking one thing, and guess what? In the present day, we're technically seeking the same thing as well, and we see it play out in two different ways. The visual storytelling on display is next level. I was just ecstatic with by the end of this film where it goes, how intense it is. This is not a boring film, though it may feel boring at first. I'm telling you, digest what is truly going on here. Yes, it is extremely brutal, but it is so purposeful in conveying specifically the horrors not shown on screen. And I think that's where this setting that Denny captures in this story is so it takes it to such a next level, because you can only imagine as an audience member what's going on outside of the interactions we have with our characters and the atrocities to it. Not only that, what deals with our main characters, what deals in this parallel plot structure around their mother. It is really top notch. I was very impressed, and I was so happy to see that Denny is absolutely living up to my title I've given him as best director of the 2010s, which I don't think he would want to even say himself.
No, I don't think so.
And anyone would. But with that said, we are going to give Incendies a 84.
Ooh. So
Stumbled for a second. It was almost going to be 48 now.
So not quite breaking it over that barrier.
No, and I think
we kind of have that 85 as a little bit something special.
Yeah, and I think it's more of a practical understanding that the level of violence may not be for everyone, and I think that's important to note, because there's some really real stuff here. And
but does it take away from the film? Like, does it make?
It was definitely enjoyable for me.
Right, it's appropriate for the film.
Yes, I think the tone is appropriate for the film. I will say, though, I mean, it's going to be not a drag, but it's going to be a little bit too intense, I think, in some spots. I don't think the film was ever trying to be edgy or push it just for the sake of pushing it. I mean, that's where the story is going.
Right, it's just trying to be real.
Yeah. And in the setting, I just think there's got to be a middle ground that I have to at least consider for this, even though I was pretty in love with this film. And I think that's communicated with 84.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
84 is very good.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's take it's quite a big jump then.
Oh, my God. Are we going to what I think we're going to?
I think we're going to go to what, So from 2010, Denis Villeneuve. we're going to go to Free Guy. Coming out this past, last year now, 2021, directed by Sean Levy. Free Guy, what do we have, Vin?
Oh, man. Let me tell you, I avoided this one in August, but I needed something light to watch among 2 3-hour films and Incendies, which was some heavy watching this week in amidst the juggling act of what is every week watching 5 movies. Free Guy is a movie about a video game world, and much in the vein of GTA or Fortnite, one non-player character or NPC, basically a computer in the game, gains basically a self-aware intelligence through the AI it has. What plays out is basically both a story within the game world, but also a story outside of the game world of the programmers of that game. My genuine feeling of this is that this is just straight up fake nerd shit. This is like a Pixels. This is a phony, an imposter. This is not...
This is not for an actual gamer.
Yeah, this is not for a gamer. This is not for a real nerd. This is for mass audiences to consume and Ryan Reynolds to have a vehicle to be Ryan Reynolds.
Sure.
It seems like it's in every
so not much depth there.
Yeah.
You got Ryan. But is it for everybody though? Or is this movie just bad?
I think, I don't know. They try to make references. They get all your favorite YouTubers in the movie, but I'm telling you, there is no soul here. Ryan Reynolds he's literally doing the same thing he's ever done, and that's literally the entire character. So, I mean, I think as a critique, there's really no relative thought put into this performance of the character being this glitch NPC. I guess to boil it down, I didn't understand why this glitched NPC would crack jokes like Ryan Reynolds would crack jokes, but I for what it's worth, if you like his shtick, let's be honest, you probably watched this film already. But if not, definitely fair warning, because this is much like a Robert Downey Jr. or something like that, a very upfront performance. You are signing up for what you're getting here.
Yeah, but Robert Downey Jr. could be like a good actor, though, too.
Sure. I'm not saying Ryan Reynolds can't, but this is 100%.
It's just Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds.
Same thing when we didn't say. I don't think you saw it. I saw it with our one buddy, but Detective Pikachu. That was the same concept. That it was like, well, this isn't Pikachu. This isn't even the character of Pikachu. This is just Ryan Reynolds voicing Pikachu, and very similar here. This is
the
just
same,
Ryan
literally
Reynolds.
the same deal.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the comedy there, in the sense that, hey, if you like the jokes being cracked, that's fine. Ryan Reynolds is a funny guy. I just don't think there's any relative thought into why this character is the NPC and why this NPC would sound like this. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make no sense. But this movie tries to do nerd culture, and I can't tell you, it just fails where it matters. The script is horrible. The script is just god awful.
And it should be known for, like, Vin, maybe it was coming across, Vin's a pretty good nerd.
Yeah.
You
could say.
You made the reference. What was the reference you made when we opened? The new game came out this past week.
Oh, right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You're in the world.
I'm in the world, yeah.
And he fails. It fails as a nerd movie.
Yeah. But that's down to this point, I think... Take that stuff aside, I think the script is just horrible. Let's just talk about it as a movie, not what it's supposed to be or what not, or what its target marketing is. It's just a terrible movie. The game world is far removed what a real game would be, but the failure isn't in that. The failure is in how the real world plot works around programmers and the logic of the script. It flat out does not make sense how programmers in the story do not know about things happening within the plot.
Okay.
How to take action within the plot, and all of this is used as just excuses to just build up the runtime, to just create a little bit of some sleight of hand within the script to keep it moving, going along, and just make sure that we can still get back to the game world with Ryan Reynolds. It really is just a vehicle to get to him. And that programming world, that real world plot, guess what? I mean, by them making that so inconsequential, the film is impossibly weaker for it. It really is just terrible because of the script specifically. All of my suspicions of this being fake gamer shit aside, this is just a very weak wannabe blockbuster plot, and just so breezy, so inconsequential. It's just terrible.
That's bad. And it was a Netflix release too, or something like that. No, it wasn't Netflix. I thought it was
I think it was in theaters.
Oh, really?
I think it's everywhere now as far as streaming is concerned.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
To just reference what I mean, though, as far as the programmers in the story not making a lick of sense, ultimately Ryan Reynolds' character is a NPC, a computer that the team of this game would have programmed and control entirely, like a god.
Right.
And the fact that there are moments in this script that they straight face say a line of just like, "Oh yeah, we can't find him. It's your game. It's your program." It's either they're just flat out incompetent, or again, what is the real answer is that this film is making fast excuses to just keep pacing runtime,
right.
keep it going to get us back in the game world with Ryan Reynolds. And at that point, why focus on the programming world at all? Why focus on the real world at all?
Yeah, it's laziness, a lack of care. Yeah. It just seems like a lack of effort put into it, basically. Like you said, it's just Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds.
Yes, it's just very blah writing that, again, inconsequential is the word.
Okay.
On a positive note, the action is pretty slick here. I would say it is an extreme level of CGI, but honestly,
it's got the Oscar nomination for visual effects.
Really?
Best Achievement in Visual Effects.
Little did I know this was an Oscar movie. I'm chipping away. I don't even know it.
Oh man!
But it captures such a ridiculous over the topness that it kind of has a style to its excess. I will say, though, that is but one silver lining in a very, very rough script.
Yeah.
That consistently breaks its own rules to achieve a mediocre end plot. I mean, I don't even see how this is worth the time of the target audience. The real world plot is just so sidelined to rush to the game world. And it's just so incredibly weaker for it as well. I can't tell you how much this resembles something like Ready Player One in its excess. But I urge you, folks, this lacks any substance for the target nerd audience.
Jeez.
And definitely lacks any substance for the average moviegoer because of its flawed approach of what it prioritizes in the movie. And again, I cannot stress enough, this is phony. This is fugazi. This is fake, I'm telling you. We're going to go ahead and give Free Guy a 31.
31.
A crash from 84.
Wow. Yeah, I was like, okay, but he's going to give him the 40s. No, 31. Sounds absolutely right, though.
The thing
I have
was,
no interest in it.
Incendies was the first movie I watched this week, and then Free Guy was the last movie I watched this week. So, and luckily, I did not have to experience the
the jarring difference.
Yeah, exactly. The true whiplash of going from movie to movie.
Damn, though. Oh my God, $120 million to make too. By the way.
Yeah, a big marketing budget, and like I said, there's a lot done to have the appearance of being a nerd game, a nerd movie, like a Ready Player One, but becomes more like a Pixels. If we ever put audio to the Ready Player One review, my quick elevator pitch of that is that, yes, there's a lot of access to it. I'm by no means a huge fan of the movie, but there is something achieved in the movie's message that it is about being a geek, being a nerd, and that translates to useless knowledge. And the movie is about useless knowledge. This has nothing to say about that type of experience, and instead is just a vehicle for, again, Ryan Reynolds telling jokes and throwing Easter eggs at the audience.
Is that terrible. Right? Yeah.
It's terrible.
Okay. Let's not spend too much more time on that. 31, Free Guy. The Free Guy. Ryan Reynolds. See it now.
See it if it's free.
But no, thank you whatsoever. Okay. Well, we'll move on to something maybe a little bit more fun. This is another kind of movie in the Kingsman world, but this is The King's Man, also released in 2021. Vin, what do we have here?
Yeah, so this one I kind of wanted to see just because I've seen all the others in this series.
And which are there? There's The Kingsman, The Kingsman 2.
Secret Service, The Kingsman Golden Circle, and now this is The King's Man.
Okay, there's a third iteration. Okay.
Yep. Matthew Vaughn, the director of all of these, back up to bat. And I will say, while I'm not a huge fan of the series, I do think he is a pretty solid director. I'm a fan of Layer Cake, as you are, Tom.
Big fan of Layer Cake.
Yep.
And would definitely would send people that way to Layer Cake. Yeah,
absolutely. X-Men First Class is probably the best X-Men film, and once again directed by Vaughn. So with this series, I thought the first one was solid. The second one, not too much. I'll leave my thoughts on that, of course, if we put audio to those reviews at some point. But this is a strategic sidestep for the brand, however, because not only is this an origin story for the spy organization within the film as the Kingsman, this has little to no connection to the other movies as far as characters go or plot threads, to the point that I don't think I even picked up the slightest Easter egg, maybe a little nods to the series, but completely a sidestep and structurally a very different film as well.
Okay.
For that reason.
Yeah, as far as that, because the first two films really kind of take place relatively present day, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And this origin story focuses around what Ralph Fiennes in what time period are we in?
So we're in kind of pre-World War I. We follow Ralph Fiennes as a military elite with political reach and riches, and really the heart of this story is that his whole world is his son. I forget the actor's name.
Harris Dickinson. Playing Conrad Oxford, his son. Yep,
exactly. So I think that really is the heart of the film. It's basically we follow Voldemort, but having a lot of heart and trying to do everything he can to protect his son from the world that he is a part of, the world at large, as World War I kind of looms in the background. And it's that really is the focus of the film. It's just him and the love of his son driving him in different ways. Where this movie works, I think, is his acting has a lot of range. And it's enjoyable to see him in a leadership role of spy organizations, a la the same enjoyment we see him as M in the Bond franchise.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, so he has the same cool appeal, I think it's definitely a hit.
Like you said, he has good range. He's actually a good actor.
Oh, yeah.
Very different from what we had before with Ryan Reynolds. You kind of know what you're getting with Ralph Fiennes. In a way, you know what you're getting with, but it can be quite a good thing.
Absolutely.
Especially where that second Kingsman, like you said, you weren't too hot on, and neither really was anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because it's like that first sequence in the taxi of the second Kingsman. It is dynamite, and the film only goes down from there.
I was almost surprised they returned to it, but when you have someone like Ralph Fiennes then backing up, it's like, all right, origin story, maybe there's something here.
And I think that's where there's this strategic sidestep. It's a different type of movie.
Right.
It's low-tech spy, which is very different than the Kingsman, which was very gadget-oriented and yada yada.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, I think it really is a sidestep for the brand to maybe create this almost a spin-off franchise from it. So I think in ways we can call this the third Kingsman. Also, I think in ways it's also a soft reboot for that reason.
Yeah, I like that.
Like I said, that is the focus, the arc for Ralph Fiennes. A very good core to the movie. And while I was a fan of that, the main setting, the main plot is like a cartoonish World War I origin film. It's very odd. Okay. I mean, it's like if World War I had a league of evil Axis villains, James Bond villains pulling the strings from the shadows.
Okay.
And believe me, I can get behind a very comic booky cartoon approach like that.
Yeah, because it's based on the comic book The Secret Service.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So
Good
if it has
I
some
had no idea.
comic book kind of feels, but how was it executed well, or was it just come off? It's like not good. It was taking away from it almost.
I think, a lot of this I'm lukewarm on. The film will call back to events within World War I's kind of history, like Franz Ferdinand, and give a stylized action movie spin to it. I think conceptually very cool. However, I think it is by far the weaker part of the two things this film tries to juggle as a very intimate story with Ralph Fiennes and the origins of the Kingsman and the just like impossibly cartoonish mustache twirling, specter organization pulling the strings, causing World War I. It's a little bit in conflict because we have a very honestly tender and raw story on the one side about a father wanting to keep his son away from what is inevitably, we know, going to be a spy organization. And then there's just such a cartoony element of it. It wasn't bad, and I think I can get behind it, but it definitely held the film back out significantly, where Ralph was raising it up pretty high.
Okay, all right.
So the fictional historical figures in this are hit and miss. I think from the most of the time when they're on screen, the more cartoonish it feels. I think this is best demonstrated with Rasputin, a real historical figure in the Russian oligarch at the time, but is now an action hero, an action villain. I would say, again, the rule of thumb is that the shorter the actual historical figures are on screen, the better it is, because it's kind of just like a wink to the camera.
Right, okay.
Your history type of nod. And then it moves on, and sometimes the real historical context is subverted, and sometimes it's played straight. But the longer these historical characters on screen, I think the logic kind of breaks, because the same type of wink and nod that is given to the audience to say, okay, this is a historical figure that was real. The more time they're on screen and the more cartoonish they have to exist in the world, it just falls apart more and more.
Right.
So I would say a pro with all these films is we get one or two really top-notch sequences as far as action goes. I feel like really that has defined the series. In the first one, obviously the church sequence that everyone lost their mind over when the first film came out.
Yeah, I remember watching The Kingsman. It was actually pretty recently, and I was like, I don't know, I don't really like it. I wasn't the biggest fan.
Yeah,
it was okay, but you were like, yeah, I understand at the time that scene was like a big deal.
Big.
It was before a lot of the gung fu stuff and what we know, and John Wick and everything like that. And yeah, definitely can understand in that light then. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is even, I don't know date wise, but I feel like this is even pre like something mainline Marvel or like a Guardians of the Galaxy that is very led by music. And music in action. I think that's an important trend to look at with those films. I think the standout here actually sheds some of that baggage that the two films in this series have already had. The standout sequence here is a very, very top-notch kind of dark sequence on the front lines of No Man's Land in World War I, and I think it is good enough to honestly pop this film up a few notches. It is very much like the opening to Kingsman 2, that it is so good. It's kind of razzle-dazzle, and I have to bring myself down to realize, what else is going in the film. But this is a really, really amazing action sequence that, unlike the bombastic nature of the action sequences in these films that are just heavy music-driven, very loud, and good for that reason, this was a very quiet film, and I think actually shows some reins for our director Vaughn.
Oh, cool.
To still create such a frenetic and electric action sequence, but draw it back into something else and not lean on what his normal crutch is.
Right.
So, wrapping up though, I think despite some gripes with pacing and me not loving the particular flavor of the cartoon plot, this movie really is, I think, oddly enough, the strongest of the Kingsman franchise. And I was shocked by that, because I think, this sidestep for the brand to kind of do a soft reboot in this way, I think I come out of this a lot more excited to see what is done, and more specifically to see Ralph back in this character. I mean, I think he is the heart of this film and really the best part, and probably what saves it from being much lower despite again, a plot that I didn't exactly love the flavor
Sure,
to.
sure.
We're going to go ahead and give The King's Man a 66.
66. I think that's extremely fair,
Mm-hmm.
and much better. When I first found out that they were coming out with this, it's just like, oh boy, why don't we just kill it? Why don't we just leave it where it was, and everyone's going to be fine. But so I was definitely expecting it could have easily been below a 50s or something like that. No shock though that Ralph Fiennes can carry it pretty good.
Yeah, and he really does carry it. I would say he's great in that.
Yeah, I can only imagine that as far as screen time, he almost 95%.
Well, yeah, I would say he gets a lot of the screen time because even the supporting characters that we see among his crew really don't get a lot of development at all. So what he's really sharing with is just the villain plot, which again, feels it has to be tasked with being an origin story for World War I, much like a comic book origin story.
Right,
which
right,
is
right.
like, I don't know. It works and it doesn't. I'm not going to be too hard on it though because it is. It's got a lot of style, and for real folks, I will take this type of stylized action film that is clearly trying to do something very unique and very much a passion project for the director and the writers over, I don't know, Fast and Furious 9, you know what I mean?
Right,
So
right. Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
take this type of action film, I think, because it has style and at least it's trying to achieve something new.
Cool. No, I like that a lot. Okay, so 66 for The King's Man. All right, so that was our 3 previously released films. We have our 2 in theaters now coming up. And this is when we go into our producer segment. And we would do our new music bed like we did last week, but we have no producers this week. So
get on it. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Sorry.
No. But, obviously new podcast here and everything like that. And as everyone's catching on, we appreciate what the feedback we're getting and everything like that. But we're kind of going off of the value for value model here. So what that says is whatever amount of value you feel like you're getting from us, whether you're listening to this site and enjoying this, or listening to the podcast and enjoying this, or going to the website and checking it out, or going more in depth in movies and checking out our database there, could you give us back some value, basically? And you can go to the dailyratings.com, go to the donations tab, and you can donate whatever amount of value that you feel that you want to. We also have set donations set up, singles, or we can do there's monthly, there's a weekly as well, and it's just those are kind of fun numbers that represent us and the films that we have scored already, and it's fun. And the cool thing is when you donate to us, you can write a paragraph, and we will read your note when we do our donation segment. We'll give you a thank you. We'll say your name, read your note, and kind of we'll discuss the note if there's topics brought up or something like that. If you want to bash us, bash us. If you want to leave, positive criticism and everything like that, that's awesome. That's what we want. It opens up a dialogue with all of you. If you want to be anonymous, don't have your name read, just click the anonymous box, and then you'll be good to go. But that's kind of how we do things here. This takes quite a decent amount of time to do on a weekly basis. It also takes some money per month, per year, and so it's just something that helps Vin and I continue to do this because this is kind of what we're doing as a side project right now, and it's quite time consuming. But we appreciate all you for the feedback that we've been getting, and you producers out there that have produced in the past. So a big thanks to you. And again, it's thedailyratings.com. Go to the donations tab, and that's where you can find all that. Now, with that being said, let's go into our next segment, the now playing, the in theaters now. The first one we have came out in 2021, but the U.S. release, because it's getting so much Oscar hype, it is just got released in the U.S. theaters, actually.
Yes, through HBO Max and through streaming.
Right. So this is Drive My Car is the U.S. title for it. And what do we have, Vin? It's a Japanese film, Drive My Car. What do we have?
A lot of hype around this one. I'm going to be up front, though, and I'm going to say I was not thrilled with this movie, and certainly not the 98 it has on Rotten Tomatoes. I question why this was for Best Picture. I have thoughts of why it may be there, but I honestly don't want to focus on that too much because speculation around the Academy and the Oscars is, it's a black hole.
Garbaggio.
Garbage.
Do you think it was almost like, because Parasite was so transformed, like, I don't know, it set a ripple through the Oscars.
That we have to look to Asian directors or I don't know. It's an interesting movie in ways, but honestly, my gut reaction is that there is a very good performance we'll get to in just a moment of a Korean Sign Language actor, and I feel
cool.
my gut it's a great performance, but for Best Picture and whatnot, my gut says that the Oscars or the Academy saw this and says we need to put this. Yeah,
is that right?
It's trying to go for some woke points maybe. Or
well, of course, right.
But
gotcha.
Like I said, that's a black hole and literally all speculation. So take it with a grain of salt. This movie is about a star actor turned director for stage plays. This is played by Hideyoshi Nishijima, and his character from the start is dealing with a pretty deep sadness that only grows to haunt him in new ways as the film plays out. Really struggles to find happiness in his life, and when happiness is coming into his life, that sadness is there to meet it and kind of block it out from the spot. To my disbelief, 40 minutes in, and we just get our opening credits in this film.
Wow.
This is a 3-hour film.
Yes, it is.
And the choice to make this 3-hour film, about whatever the story is or what they want to unfold, it feels, this first 40 minutes, that is, feels like a pilot to a TV show and is really not great for that reason. I think this could have been cut. I think this could have been, if you really
you could have cut the first 45 minutes and just start with the title sequence.
Yeah. I think cutting the first 40 minutes leaves a lot more to the imagination and unpacks for the characters. Instead, this first 40 minutes is focused on the initial trauma for our main character, where I think even if you really want to keep that content to keep the audience engaged throughout the film, maybe flash back to it, maybe have some sort of kind of postmodern type of way to incorporate it in the film. It plays out way too straightforward, and again, the film basically restarts after 40 minutes in tone.
Oh my gosh.
And
so really, the goal of the first 45 minutes is to create depth with the character.
Yeah, it's basically the inciting incident to where his current sadness is, but also the understanding at the end of this film is that this character has always had sadness. So I think it really is a little bit of a waste of time. And again, not only that, it feels so incredibly different. It feels like the pilot to a TV show, and then the movie we get on the back end of that is different. I don't want to talk too much about it because, it goes into... I don't think the first 40 minutes was exactly terrible, but it's the specific combining of these two.
Of the thing of, one, they were different, and two, if you already have a 3-hour movie, there's 45 minutes to actually cut there.
Exactly. So
because
it's kind of make up your mind. You want this 3-hour movie? Sure, fine. Incorporate that to be digestible for the audience and hook them in a little bit more instead of front-loading it, and then we just have to deal with a big movie that we kind of know what's up already.
Okay, interesting.
So it's that's really where I was not hot on this film. I understand what this movie wants to establish. I cannot stress that enough, but it could have been done in such a different way. Luckily, the acting is good here.
Okay.
Thankfully, for a film about Japan's performing world, I think it would be an even bigger slight if a movie about actors, stage actors no less, had bad acting. The knives are out today. So, no punches.
I think it's all fair. I think it's all warranted.
Yeah. Nearly every role, I would say, is very intentionally drawn back and reserved, where we look into something with this week with Incendies, where the acting is reserved because of the intensity of the plot that these characters are digesting, much how the audience is digesting. Mm-hmm. I would say the drawn back acting, the roles, certainly it plays into a melancholy, and that is the feel of this whole film, but I would not call it engaging or gripping. Even moments where the plot spikes, finally, we get some whoa moments in what's happening with our characters. Our characters are just far too reserved in reacting to the events, and that is kind of the whole style of the film, but once again, much like the first 40 minutes, not bad in concept, but in execution does not engage the audience in the way it should,
so
It's like, certainly not for a Best Picture.
Yeah, Is it shooting itself in the foot, basically, in the sense that it's just like, there's depth here, there's good things happening here, but they're not capturing the emotion behind it.
Yeah.
They're not capturing the depth that it really could be.
I think the emotion's there. It's just that, acting is reacting. And
Right.
by not reacting, certainly there's follow through on the style that this film wants. And don't get me wrong, I like sad movies. Like Her
Mass last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I like heavy concepts or heavy subject matter. And I like sadness and melancholy in films explored. But there's not a single moment that we finally get a breakthrough that we see our characters affected like they should be affected.
Like they should be, okay.
So
it's very muted.
Yeah, and I can't stress
characters.
enough, I understand that the film is going for that.
Right.
That everyone being reserved and drawn back is kind of the point of it, kind of their trauma that they can't express maybe, even, despite being actors. But I can't. It was just not engaging. I think the failure it makes is a very gripping film, and certainly for my role as a critic to recommend a film, I am not racing to talk to you, Tom, and say like, oh, you gotta watch Drive My Car. You know what I mean? It's,
Right.
It's just not engaging. I mean, it's a very, very pocket film for that reason.
Man, I wonder why it got its hooks into the award circle, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure.
And people are just bandwagging it on, like you said. I mean, 98 on Rotten Tomatoes is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that we've talked about it in the past. I mean, that is not for the sake of just really ragging on a film.
No.
But I enjoy this role in critiquing movies and creating a watching guide as the goal of this podcast, because this is not a 98 film. This is not,
It's what it's, Rotten Tomatoes is saying there's only 2% bad with the
exactly.
movie. And otherwise
or
known
2%
as
in dissonance among reviewers even. Or,
right.
Yeah, it's like...
it's absurd,
Yeah.
which is why we stay away from 98 for the most
Exactly.
part. Yeah.
So count me in that 2% if you really want, but this is not I would not really recommend this film for that reason. I think there are some standouts to it that...
Wow, wouldn't even recommend it, really.
Well, it definitely pushes to be an above average watch, but I am by no means really hot on it at all. I'm not saying that this is... I mean, this is... If you really like a very sad movie... If you don't mind 3-hour movies, if you like kind of maybe a Lost in Translation type of vibe,
Sure.
that the melancholy or the sadness is the point.
That weird, yes, yeah.
That's I think that's this.
But like
type
you
of
said,
movie.
but you don't even mind that. It's just are you doing it right? Is there a purpose behind it? Are the actors executing it? I mean, how's the story as far as being a 3-hour story? Is it good? Well, like you said, it's really a 45-minute story cut. And then an hour, and then an hour,
or more,
2
hour,
15, yeah.
It is good. We basically have this inciting incident within the first 40 minutes that shapes the lens of how our main character is going to react to things. And again, like I said in my summary, it's the film is really about moments of life shining some happiness into our characters, and then their sadness coming to meet it and not allowing them to be happy. I think that is the elevator pitch of this. For that reason, though, and in the title, Drive My Car, a lot of driving sequences, very slow. And again, I have no problem with reflective times on screen or seeing our actors only subtly react. But I think acting is reacting to maybe be a little bit more bombastic, to show how they're affected. I think there's the subtlety is too much in this film. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's be subtle, but have punch where you're supposed to have punch, or have real raw gripping emotion when you're supposed to. It doesn't sound like it was gripping.
Exactly. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. Maybe a story that is, it's certainly a competently made film, certainly a slow film in concept, and has a concept it wants to achieve. I think it's probably successful as well in achieving that, but it lacks the hook that I would say is a recommend for me. Where again, not to over compare, but Incendies, the hook was 100% there. If anything, the hook was too big, and then I had to kind of give a little bit of a kind of a trigger warning to it, and a fair warning for it. So, if I had to give a pitch for this movie, though, I believe this story is about communication both what is said and maybe specifically not said in life. Structurally, that is a theme in this film by having multilingual characters. We have actors speaking in English, Japanese, Mandarin, and even Korean. But I think this is best demonstrated by one of our actresses, Park Yu-rim, that communicates solely through Korean Sign Language. This is where the tone and the story meet. And without a doubt, my favorite scenes in this film was with this actress because it's such a great follow through on the concept that if this film is about maybe a sadness of things left unsaid in life, guess what? This character is not saying anything. She is communicating with her hands, but she doesn't get that luxury to speak, to say everything or inflect in her reactions, in her marriage, in her acting, and really that was the standout. Again, while I think that maybe the inclusion of this film for Best Picture specifically could have been the Oscars far-reaching or the Academy far-reaching, I think Park Yu-rim is a amazing performance, and I think a wonderful inclusion to have Korean Sign Language in this film, where it was, at first I was like, oh boy, is this going to be a thing? And it actually had such meaning and follow through for what the film is about. So much so that really this actress gets the final performance of the film truly. However, I would say it is a mere silver lining to a very passive and lacking spice, very bland, unfortunately.
It's very disappointing to hear.
I know. I would say I'm even coming weaker than with a recommendation than The Power of the Dog, which a very different film, but I think those two unfortunately are my feelings on these Best Picture nods. I think those are going to be the films that I would say, that's really what I mean by Oscar bait. That it's
sure, yeah, absolutely.
It's beyond just a style. It's that it's not per se worth your time, but probably going to get critical praise. So, I would say it ties back to my critique to keeping the audience engaged. I want a film to be exciting to talk about. And believe me, I can talk about a sad movie and be excited about it. But that excitement is not here.
Again, you're very hot on Mass last week.
Exactly.
And that was, you said it was very emotionally taxing.
It was a grieving box. It was a film of grief. But it comes, I think, a little bit down to the performances. But I think, once again, a theme this week is script and creating engagement and doing right by your audience. And I think in this case for Drive My Car, what is not done is layer the plot, especially the inciting incident in a creative, in a hooking way, in a gripping way for the audience. And it's just played a little too straightforward, despite, otherwise being a fine story for what it wants to achieve. We're going to go ahead and give Drive My Car a 60 on the dot.
Oh, 60. Yeah, it's better than I thought, actually.
Yeah. I think if I remember, I gave Power of Dog... Not that it has to be a comparison thing, because it really is not.
Of course.
Power of the Dog was 62, and just in general, my guiding factor for me is that there's a lot of good performances in here, and I think it is a pretty well-made film, but that script really just sinks my recommendation to bring it higher than a 60, honestly. I think it's, if anything, it's right on the cuff of being just middle of the road,
Yeah, and like you said, the acting was good, but also it could have been a little bit better, too. It seems like it could have been hitting the emotions way better.
Allow me to say, don't get me wrong, I love Japanese storytelling as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, you do, yeah.
Live action and animated, any type of storytelling that is done in the Japanese filmmaking space. So, again, this almost should have been right up my alley.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough that it's really not terribly worth your time unless you, again, are knocking off a lot of Oscar nods and want to have kind of a completion.
And it's scratching a certain itch maybe you have or a certain liking. Again, a 60 is not bad. It's just like a relatively okay film. It's one step above completely null or completely average out of 50. So that's interesting. But I think it's important to note that it is 60 to kind of tamp down expectations.
Exactly.
And also, once again, the Oscars don't exactly have best movies in interest, actually.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of boxes to check before they actually get into actual.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So 60 for Drive My Car, a little disappointing, but.
You're telling me.
Yeah. Thanks for the 3 hours spent.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, if it wasn't 3 hours, I mean, boy.
Alrighty, so that's 60 for Drive My Car, and now we have the big blockbuster, the one that we've been all waiting for quite some time. This is Robert Pattinson in the new The Batman.
The Batman.
I have been, even before the show, I didn't even ask you about it.
You're right, yeah.
I've been waiting. I have been very much waiting for it. I wanted to wait till.
We didn't even talk. We were silent, folks. We came in. The mics are humming,
But so I'm super excited. I think a lot of people listening are definitely excited about this particular one. We have The Batman. What do we have in?
All right. It is, I would say, a little bit daunting to talk about Batman for the first time on the podcast, but I'm going to try to keep this condensed to this movie as much as possible.
Right. That's good.
Because it is, once again, a meaty 3 hours. It is a big, big film. Starting off, I don't have any watch time with the director, Matt Reeves. That's important to note because this Batman is nebulous. This is not connected to any existing Batman out right now. I think that's fairly confusing for audiences, especially with the semi-recent release of Joker. That is, kind of positioning where this film is in the Batman mythos or maybe just existing series is a little tough. I'm here to say that this is a completely on its own Batman story, not connected to seemingly anything other than its own setup within the movie. The elevator pitch for this is The Batman is we find Bruce Wayne in year 2 of his crime-fighting career. I'm a big fan of this distinction because it lets the audiences decipher where the hell this particular Batman story takes place.
That's actually really good.
Yeah. I think it very quickly... It gives certainly comic book nerds an understanding of the type of Batman story we're going to get.
It's true. I mean, for not the biggest fans out there, it's because, as far as the comic books are concerned, you get a much different Batman early and then older Batman. I mean, I like that there's a distinction between after years and years of crime fighting, you become a different person.
Exactly.
Down to it. Actually, things that you liked about, what's his face's Batman?
This was in my notes, Ben Affleck's.
Yeah, because you liked Ben Affleck's because he was
It was a late era Batman.
Right, and who had definitely a darker side to him.
Yep. I had a whole rant, but I cut it. But yeah, I think in general, if anything, I want to give credit to Matt Reeves because by labeling this year 2, you could say, all right, well, who cares? It's a year 2 of Batman. But I think strategically, within the movie itself, it defines itself among any other Batmans and the confusing...
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Batman every decade, basically, if you look at it from the 90s.
It's exhausting.
It's a new Batman series every decade, basically. So... The early time period gives us new styles not explored. Honestly, Bruce Wayne, it is like if Bruce was was in the Misfits. It's a very moody, very emo punk Bruce that is played by Robert Pattinson. He is confronted by a new serial killer on the loose, adopting a mask of their own called the Riddler. I think Rob does a great job here. He snaps at Alfred. He lets his eye makeup run down after a night of crime fighting. It's very edgy, but it all works.
It does.
Really does all work.
I really didn't know how I was gonna when you see emo Batman.
Right.
How's it gonna play off?
Right. What I will say is why I want to bring this up is I think as with any new casting with an iconic thing, we see this, or with an iconic role, we see a lot of critics of Robert Pattinson and saying, oh, he can't do this, he can't do that, a la James Bond, a la, anything.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's second up to bat, or in this case, who knows how many up to bat. With this, though, I would say I was a fan of this. I think it definitely works with the mood of the film. I will say, if you are not a fan of Robert, or rather thrilled with the casting specifically, the very moody way this character is written, I don't think is going to save Robert's performance for you. So maybe something to consider. I will say happily it does work for me, because primarily the same moodiness that is around Batman, it really does work with the rest of the tone this film has. This film is very gothic, right down to the name of Gotham. We see this much more in just the city. The city itself takes a lesson from Joker, and that it makes it a character, makes it grimy. And I think that's important setting, because if there's anything holding the Nolan films back, when you return to them, Gotham looks a little safe. It looks just like, downtown Manhattan. Like that. So there is time put into this dark, gritty feel. It is also sold in the inclusion of everything from church bells into the score, or a new high collar cowl to Batman, and I really do think a more stylized Batman is where this comes into play, and where this film really succeeds in its tone. A huge positive here is the score by Michael Giacchino. He outdid himself with a very unique Batman theme, which is,
this is very exciting to me.
Yeah, how do you make a huge Batman? How do you make a unique Batman theme? After Batman's in the all decade, every decade. But it really is the heart of this film, and I think it sells the tone of, this is grimy Gotham, this is old money, and this is moody Bruce Wayne.
Cool.
That's kind of
I
the
dig that.
trifecta.
I dig that, yeah.
Absolutely. Let me rapid fire some performances here. Robert Pattinson, like I said, very good by me. I would say, in the grand scheme of things, probably just as silly as any Batman voice, you know what I mean? So if I wanted to combat maybe some naysayers of how moody he is, go ahead, watch The Dark Knight. I mean, I think it's an absolutely must-watch, phenomenal movie, but it is a little goofy, as far as voices and whatnot.
Does he have? I know you barely hear him in the trailer, but he seems to have a pretty. I mean, it works. His Batman voice seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's not the voice itself. It's just how the character comes off.
Okay,
it's very juvenile.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say,
I believe he's actually 20 years old. The character.
Oh, damn! Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be very early on. So
I like that.
Yeah.
So we don't get super muscular, like, buff.
No, yeah, definitely not Ben Affleck buff Chub Batman.
Yeah, right.
Chub man.
Okay.
So, Zoe Kravitz, I would say, is absolutely redeemed from her performance in Kimmy. She is cool as ice in this as Catwoman, and I mean, not that the bar is set too possibly high, but probably my favorite Catwoman. No joke.
Maybe the bar isn't set too high, though.
Yeah, that's true. Halle Berry.
I mean, Zoe Kravitz, but she was good. I really don't know her or don't know her acting all that well. I know you did not love Kimmy whatsoever, but like she really did fit.
Yeah, she was
fit
good.
Into this pretty well.
Obviously the sex appeal is huge, and I think it really works chemistry wise between her and Robert Pattinson. And I think, that's kind of going to plague a Batman story that includes Catwoman, is that romance element.
Yeah.
But it does work here, because I think there's a lot of stress to the plot, and I think it is a good release valve for the stress.
And you have 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can definitely have some content filler there. Yeah.
Oddly, though, my favorite performance is Colin Farrell as I'm almost without a doubt the best portrayal of the Penguin we have ever had on screen yet.
Very cool.
You're almost questioning the makeup and saying, is it really Colin Farrell under there?
Is that good, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If I really wanted to be critical, I mean, is it that hard to throw on a gangster accent? And, what do you want, Toots? Is it really that hard to do that? But I think it's the follow through of introducing the Penguin as a character in this way, and the makeup work is really stellar. I really did enjoy the transformation.
That's awesome.
That Colin did here.
Was it as good as or better than maybe a Christian Bale as Dick Cheney?
Oh, as far
Which,
as like
as far as like surprises with people, you know what I mean? I feel like some of the best transformations we've had in recent years would have been Jared Leto in House of Gucci.
Yes.
And then
100%.
Colin Farrell here as Penguins, what it seems like, and Christian Bale as Dick Cheney.
Yeah, I don't know too much into production. I think Bale's weight was real with that portrayal.
Oh, yes.
Where I believe it's mostly makeup work with these two other instances.
Okay, gotcha.
I think. I don't know for sure.
But Colin was very much more fatter suit and a lot of facial makeup.
But that's not to say it's bad whatsoever.
No, that's awesome
Very
that they did a good job on it.
Yeah, very good looking, and once again plays an interesting real estate space within Batman mythos as early Cobblepot. He's not exactly Penguin yet.
Right,
so
right.
we see this this character or this role early on, and there's some enjoyment in that for deep cut fans, obviously, that have seen every iteration of Batman. But I think legitimately for new watchers as well, it's a great introduction. Again, it's introduced as this year 2. I think that's a great way to let your audience know, hey, don't worry about even the most recent of DC properties with Batman. You know, that you can just enjoy this film, and there's a lot there. And really, what is left here is the Riddler, played by Paul Dano, which I got to be honest, unfortunately, is the bulk of my critique. I really wasn't too much of a fan of this performance. I think the concept is good, but let me unpack this a little bit. So the main point I want to get across here is that this movie conceptually is described as a thriller. It is described as in the vein of a David Fincher film or something like that.
Okay.
Even in how I described the Riddler in the summary, this is not a comic book mustache twirling villain. This is a real serial killer with all the horror wrapped up into that. And I think that's a great jump that is obviously explored plenty in Batman comics and like deep cut comics of Batman, but hasn't really been explored. Even the realness of the Nolan films, it has not been explored in that way. That his villains, his rogues gallery is filled with just mentally unstable people. So there's some good concept there.
That is good. Yeah, so they were really going for that.
Oh,
because
yeah.
even with Nolan, I mean, you said the Joker, it got into some pretty like more crazier stuff than what we get. It's more of a polished kind of older Batman movies and stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly.
So they were really going for it on this one.
Yeah, but I think it's tied into a huge black eye on the film, and it's just very simply it's a conflicting PG-13 rating, and conflicting with where the script clearly wants to go. Where this ties into my main critique is this film is presented like this wannabe Fincher film, wannabe thriller, but does not have the punch. And unfortunately, Riddler is the one to kind of take that. There's a lot of disturbing imagery with Riddler, but as far as how the action is presented around this film is filled to the brim with tactics to cut away violence, blurs, and extreme depth of field in action sequences.
It takes away from it.
Yeah, it makes it feel cheap.
So it should have been rated R.
It should have been rated R.
If it was able to be rated R, that is.
I think this would have been quite possibly a contender to knock off the throne of Dark Knight.
Wow.
Because the style would have been such a beautiful matching to it.
But they needed to not dumb it down. They
yeah,
more palatable for the wider audience.
Absolutely. And what am I saying? It's a Batman film. You think, Warner Brothers is going to actually put a rated R to their biggest...
Of course not. No, obviously we know why it's rated PG-13.
Yeah.
It's a shame because the movie that they were actually striving for needed to be rated R film.
The script and the character of the Riddler want to go in one direction, and honestly, the events of the story still tried to go in that direction, but what falls through the cracks is the action itself. And I'm sorry, action is a big element of a superhero film.
Especially the Batman, absolutely.
Exactly.
How was Paul Dano as far as just like acting-wise and being, a
psychopath?
psychopath?
I think he's good. He's definitely a little bit cartoonish when we get face to face, which is of course what I want out of the Riddler. I mean, this is a we're talking. I love Batman Forever. I love Jim. So I I was excited, honestly, for more cartoonish Batman. But that aside, I think Dano's performance is fine. It's once again, it feels like it's chains.
He wasn't given the runway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, and
Wow.
it's a shame because Dano is disturbing on screen. He has a lot of sequence, especially in his element, that are right out of a full blown rated R thriller.
Okay.
But again, my critique is not saying, "Oh, I wish it could have been rated R." No, that's not where I'm focusing on. I'm saying a byproduct of these restraints in this PG-13. What falls is not performances, is not the setup, it's the action that falls from it. They have to cut away from explosions, they have to cut away from hits, and again, for the keen eye among you folks at home, take a look at how the action is filmed, how the depth of field is done. Unfortunately, I think it results in a cheaper look for the more important parts of what a Batman film
that sucks.
is. Yeah. But I would say the good news here and what balances out my critique of this, because it's a little bit of preference, but it really is an observation of what falls through because of a byproduct of that PG-13 rating. For a Batman movie, this is less about an action superhero movie and really more of a thriller detective story. And I think Matt Reeves achieves something new in a landscape of, again, 4 decades of Batman.
You know what? I pity the directors that continue to topple onto Batman films because with each
you're running out of real estate.
Yeah, with each new director to set of films, it's just like, okay, damn it, how are we gonna separate ourselves from this one? And Christopher Nolan almost had the easiest. Now he's the first one to do it,
right?
Which made it most important.
A gritty, gripping,
and changing things big time. But then it's just like, okay, how do we keep on reinventing ourselves a little bit? And if seriousness is the way to go, for me, I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we get such a lack of it when it comes to Marvel.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And thank God for Chris Nolan kicking that off.
Yeah.
Interesting, though. I mean, I love that. I love what they were going for. It would be interesting to see, not that I'm saying that they should, but it would be interesting to see a recut or a re-edit, much like a Zack Snyder, for a more mature audience.
I would love that. Who knows? Who knows? We're in the Wild West as far as that's concerned. I have no idea.
Not that
if I was a betting man, I would bet the Snyder cut of Justice League would never come out. So.
Right.
But yeah, I think the good news is, let's talk about what Batman truly can be. It is the world's greatest detective. That is his tagline, and this is less of an action story, less of an action superhero story, and more of a slow burn thriller detective story.
Yep.
And I think not only does it carve out a spot among a plethora of Batman movies, both animated from Warner Brothers and DC's shop, to the mainline Batman films that we've all seen. And for that reason, I really could see maybe younger audiences this being their Batman, much how Dark Knight was our Batman.
Yeah.
So I think the style itself is a really big highlight to it, despite, again, some gripes with the action itself. But if it's not trying to achieve that, and certainly if I can, even in my own critique, support a viewpoint that says, forget about the action, it's about the thriller aspects of what this film is trying to go for, and year 2 Batman, I think I still come very, very positive here. It may not reach the heights, unfortunately, of Dark Knight, but we're going to go ahead and give The Batman a 79.
Ooh, 79. Okay, not quite scraping the 80s.
But still very,
79 is a very good score.
Extremely good.
And really is a should watch. Again, folks, like if you're in the high 70s, those are big time should watches. In the 80s, definitely should watches,
The score is a should listen.
I cannot wait. Oh my God, I cannot
on
wait.
its own, yeah.
Did the score poke and nibble at like old school comic Batman? Like were there almost elements or tones or...
Made me Catwoman. Catwoman has almost, it feels like the original theme or motif in the Penguin Catwoman in Batman Returns, the Burton film.
But nothing of like dark bass of... No,
maybe an ultra slowed version. I don't know. I'd have to get the phones on and examine it. But no, I think this has a really thick identity of its own, and I think think that's really the best part about that, and almost the most daunting task, and that's why I come so positive with the review.
Maybe as a composer to keep our
yeah, absolutely.
Keep our ears out for, yeah,
100%. So it was a good watch, and I was thankful because. Yeah. I think, especially after the Ben Affleck run, I was not really excited for new Batman. I thought it was all done.
Nobody was all that excited for new Batman.
Exactly. So the fact that, once again, it's carving a spot among the great Batman stories, I think that's a win and definitely a recommendation from me.
Very cool. All right, Vin, is there anything else, or are we going to roll credits here?
I think we're running long. I just wanted to say, because of the influx of trailers that I've had to see, if I have to see the Morbius trailer one more time, I text it down. I'm gonna blow my brains out. It's so bad. It's so bad.
I'm not looking forward to that film. That's for sure.
Oh, new Jurassic Park 2. That trailer feels like it's made by an alien. It feels like it's made by an alien that has studied a human interaction.
Sure, but I love Sam Neill, and I love seeing my boy.
Jeff
Goldblum on it. Jeff Goldblum. 62 looks dynamite, by the way, for 62. Anyway.
He does, absolutely.
All right. So
well, that's truly it now.
Okay. Just bitching about the trailers a little bit. Yeah. All right, very cool, Vin. Well, thank you very much, Vin, for putting some time in for those 3-hour films. We appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you next week. And for folks at home, we're just going to run it through one more time here. We have Incendies with an 84%, Free Guy with a 31, The King's Man with a 66, Drive My Car with a 60, and The Batman with a 79%. We thank you so much, folks, for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors, so we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.